Okay, so we're at June 2021, lessons 4, which is the end of chapter 9, the last 6 verses, and chapter 5, which is titled Bhagavatam is the Answer, and that's the first 9 verses. So we'll start here with Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, chapter 9, texts 41 and 42. Narada, the most dear of the inheritor sons of Brahma, always ready to serve his father, strictly follows the instructions of his father by his mannerly behavior, meekness, and sense control. Narada very much pleased his father and desired to know all about the energies of Vishnu, the master of all energies. For Narada was the greatest of all sages and the greatest of all devotees, O king. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Brahma, being the creator of all living beings in the universe, is originally the father of several well-known sons, like Daksha, the Chatusanas, and Narada. In 3 departments of human knowledge decimated by the Vedas, namely fruitive work, or karma kanda, transcendental knowledge, or gyan kanda, and devotional service, upasana kanda, Devarshi Narada inherited from his father Brahma devotional service, whereas Daksha inherited from his father fruitive work, and Sanaka, Sanatana, etc., inherited from their father information about Gyan Kanda, or transcendental knowledge. But out of them, Narada is described here as the most beloved son of Brahma because of good behavior, obedience, meekness, and readiness to render service unto the Father. And Narada is famous as the greatest of all sages because of his being the greatest of all devotees.
Thank you, and welcome again, everyone. We're going to continue today with Ian. Would you like to begin reading? And then after Ian, Vaishnavi. Remember to mute when you're not speaking, and to speak up and try to make the sounds in the background as small as possible. Thank you. Ready, Ian? Unmute. He is unmuted. We can't hear you, Ian. It seems there's some technical difficulty. So, Ian, you read after Vaishnavi. Are you there, Vaishnavi? No. Okay, Radha, why don't you read? Radha, are you able to read, Radha?
She wrote no, she just wants to listen.
Okay, sweetie. Okay, Nandaji, could you please begin for us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Srimad Bhagavatam 2:9-43. The great sage Narada also inquired in detail from his father, Brahma, the great grandfather of all the universe, after seeing him well satisfied. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In the process of understanding spiritual transcendental knowledge from the realized person is not exactly like asking an ordinary question from the schoolmaster. The schoolmasters in the modern days are paid agents for giving some information, but the spiritual master is not a paid agent, nor can he impart instruction without being authorized. In the Bhagavad Gita 4:34, Arjuna was advised to receive transcendental knowledge from the realized person by surrender, questions, and service. Receiving transcendental knowledge is not like exchanging dollars. Such knowledge has to be received by service to the spiritual master. As Brahmaji received the knowledge directly from the Lord by satisfying him fully, similarly, one has to receive the transcendental knowledge from the spiritual master by satisfying him. The spiritual master's satisfaction is the means of assimilating transcendental knowledge. One cannot understand transcendental knowledge simply by becoming a grammarian. The Vedas declare, quote, only unto one who has unflinching devotion to the Lord and to the spiritual master does transcendental knowledge become automatically revealed.
Thank you, Nandaji. Just one question. What does this mean? The spiritual master's satisfaction is the means of assimilating transcendental knowledge. What does that actually, what does that mean?
Well, actually, it's explaining that that as the very first verse of the Bhagavatam, Tene Brahma Hrida, that knowledge is revealed in the heart. It's and as Prabhupada gave the example there in the purport, it's not a money exchange. It's not like that. It's by the pleasing of the spiritual master, the knowledge is revealed in the heart. Is that what you're getting at, or did you expect
well, I had that certainly is the essence of it. So the first, we know in devotional service there's 9 processes, and the first service that would be required, I even heard Prabhupada say this morning, is Shravanam, hearing. We should understand that this hearing process is direct service to the spiritual master. And it is the most essential. And actually hearing also means action, following, right? What do you think about that? Is that true, Nandaji?
Totally true. Spoken.
Okay.
One question I have when this when this topic comes up is, can anyone give an, because it appears so similar to even receiving mundane knowledge. The same thing is there. You have to hear from somebody who knows. Then you perform the instructions that person gave, and you get some understanding by doing it. So the question arises: what is the difference?
Oh, well, I can begin with that. Prabhupada also gives the example of there's a house next door, and the people in the house are eating and sleeping and going through life, and then the other house where a temple is, or a home in which devotional service is being performed, the food is being offered to Krishna, things are being the same life experiences are being going through, the people are going through it for the satisfaction of Krishna. So we've discussed this before, that is an attitude of devotional service. It looks the same, but in the heart, it changes the heart because of that attitude of devotional service. Is that okay? Or does anyone else have something to add for that, Bhadra? Unmute, Bhadra.
Dandavat, everybody. In the material world, the exchange is, as Srila Prabhupada is mentioning, the purport is dollar exchanging. You're getting the knowledge by paying something to someone. In the spiritual life, there is no question of exchange of dollar or money. It is a spiritual knowledge. It is the voluntary also. The question of you disciple is surrendering out of love to the spiritual master, and spiritual master imparting that knowledge to you is touching your heart.
I have a question for you, Bhadra, about that.
Yeah.
Having been many people give thousands and thousands of dollars to this movement. How could you say it's not an exchange of money? Because actually there's payment, and the payment begins with service and hearing and following the instructions. So money
you're giving the dollar with understanding that my karma, what I'm getting the money, I'm using it for the right purpose. Right, I'm supposed to use in right purpose anyhow from the beginning. Nothing belongs to me anyhow. So what I'm getting is by the mercy of Krishna, and I have to offer to Krishna. Say, out of love you are doing it. In the material world is the exchange out of selfish motive. Is that
okay? Okay. Well, this is everything that we touch upon is a very big topic, but I think we should go on. Pati, is that satisfactory?
Yes.
No.
One other point I wanted to share is that the knowledge that's being transmitted is different. It's not material knowledge. Knowledge that's being imparted into the heart of a disciple via this disciplic succession is knowledge of this spiritual world beyond this material tabernacle. Just like Brahma actually saw the spiritual world, he received directions and instructions directly from the Lord. That spiritual vibration is what's being passed down via this disciplic succession. It's not how to make more money or how to live your life in such a way that you can enjoy more here or more expertly here. That's not the purpose of the knowledge which is being imparted. So I just wanted to kind of emphasize that.
Knowledge is different. There's different kinds of knowledge, spiritual knowledge and material knowledge. Okay, so let's go on with the next verse. And Ian, are you set up to read now?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, is it better? Okay. Let me see. So it's 2944?
Yes. Try
Okay.
speak right into the mic there.
2944. Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay. So thereupon the supplemented Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, which was described by the personality of Godhead and which contains 10 characteristics, was told with satisfaction rather, by the father Brahma to his son Narada. Although the Srimad Bhagavatam, that's purport, was spoken in 4 verses, it had 10 characteristics, which will be explained in the next chapter. In the 4 verses, it is first said the Lord existed before the creation, and thus in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam includes the Vedanta, aphorism, Janmadi, Asya. Janmadi Asya is the beginning, yet the 4 verses in which it is said that the Lord is the root of everything that be. Beginning from the creation up to the supreme abode of the Lord, naturally explain the 10 characteristics. One should not misunderstand by wrong interpretations. The Lord spoke only 4 verses, and that therefore all the rest of the 17,994 verses are useless. The 10 characteristics, as will be explained in the next chapter, require so many verses just to explain them properly. Brahmaji had also advised Narada previously that he should expand the idea he had heard from Brahmaji. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed this to Srila Rupa Goswami in a nutshell, but disciple Rupa Goswami expanded this very elaborately. And the same subject was further expanded by Jiva Goswami and even further by Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. We are just trying to follow in the footsteps of all these authorities. So Srimad Bhagavatam is not like ordinary fiction or mundane literature. It is unlimited in strength, and although one may expand it according to one's own ability, Bhagavatam still cannot be finished by such expansion. Srimad Bhagavatam, being a sound representation of the Lord, is simultaneously explained in 4 verses and in 4 billion verses, all the same. Inasmuch as the Lord is smaller than the atom and bigger than the unlimited sky, such is the potency of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Thank you. That's such an important point, really. The last section of it. Pati, could you put that back for a second real quick? The verse. Because, you know, we're thinking in the mundane world that knowledge that we receive, that's it, that's the absolute, and there's no change, and nothing can expand from it. Whereas transcendental knowledge is ever expansive. So what has been revealed to us in this world, the Bhagavatam, how it's been revealed, this is just, it expands infinitely. There's nothing like that in the material world. I thought that's an important point. Okay, let's go on with the next verse then.
Before you go,
okay.
Just one point in our understanding of Sambandha, our relationship with the Lord. There's Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. Understanding the relationship, acting in the relationship, and by doing so, developing love. So this concept, this idea, this potency of the Lord as a person and what he can do and how he does it, how he can become smaller than an atom, how he becomes larger than the largest, this all expansive, fluid nature of spirit should give us as individual tiny spiritual sparks, great hope and confidence that he can personally relate with us in our relationship with him. He has that ability. He has that potency. This is one of the aspects that's part of his nature.
Thank you. Roger, before I ask you something, I just want I wanted Ian, if you're still there, if you could speak something about that, since you have read it just now, the absolute nature and how the Lord is expanding himself and how that makes one feel hopeful. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah, could you put back the slide up for me, please?
Okay. Patsy, you want to put the screen up real quick? Yeah. So just
Okay.
the last part, that
Okay.
that it's expanding. The Bhagavatam is expanding unlimitedly into 4 billion verses, and which is not an experience that we have in the material world. Things don't expand; they become destroyed.
Okay. So it says okay, it's not the ordinary fiction or mundane literature. It is unlimited strength, and however one may expand it according to one's own ability. So here we see it can, based on one's ability, one can expand on the string of Bhagavatam. It still cannot be finished by such expansion. And it's been the sound representation of the Lord. It's simultaneously explaining 4 verses, and the 4 billion verses are the same. So we are saying that, yeah, so we can expand on it, but that does not affect it. We keep expanding as you know. So,
Right. It doesn't change it. It expands
No.
it. There's a good. That was. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go on. Patsy, should we take Badra's question, or should we just go on? And that'll be bad for life. Badra, speak what you had to say, my darling.
Okay, just a question here. It says Rupa Goswami expanded and Jiva Goswami expanded this. So is that the Jiva Goswami expanded this? That means the Sat Sandarbhas? Is that what the Srimad Bhagavatam or the Jiva Rupa Goswami? Can you please, because I know Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has his commentary, but how is the Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami's commentary?
As far as my understanding is that when you hear from the spiritual master or the Srimad Bhagavatam, then you expand it through your own realizations. That's what expanding.
No. I understand, but I'm talking about particularly books, because Rupa Goswami has written many books, Jiva Goswami has written many books. So particularly Srimad Bhagavatam, which they're expanding in particular. Can someone know the name of the books which is Rupa Goswami expanded? That's what I mean.
Yeah, from my understanding, I think that it's based on everything that we have to say is based on the 4 verses. What do you think, Patsy?
If you look at the chapter 19 of Madhya Lila, that's the nutshell conversation that Lord Chaitanya had with Rupa Goswami. They spent 10 days together in Prayag. And Srila Prabhupada in those purports explains that Rupa Goswami took those instructions and he wrote the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Nectar of Devotion. And we know from other sources that the sequel, the Nectar of Devotion starts with Vaidhi Bhakti. It starts with instructions how to perform devotional service, and then goes on to Raga Bhakti, how by performing the rules and regulations, one's natural affinity and spontaneous love for Krishna awakens. And then it goes into descriptions of different aspects of rasa, or relationships with the Lord, and gives examples from different scriptures about those aspects. Then Rupa Goswami wrote a sequel and expanded it even further by explaining more specifically about Srimati Radharani and the gopis and their feelings, and different examples from Shastra and pastimes where those rasa experiences were manifest. So there's Nectar of Devotion, or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and Ujjvala Nalamani. Then he wrote some other subsequent verses like Dankeli Kamudi and books about pastimes. But those are the 2 main books by Rupa Goswami. that are specifically expanding these teachings that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him, which are the same basic teachings that the Lord gave Brahma.
Right.
Brahmande Brahmate Kon Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Pasadi Paya Bhakti Lata Bij, and then he expanded from that.
Thank you.
Nanda, did you have a question or a statement?
I have a statement because I just heard from Hari Parshad talk about Srila Jiva Goswami. He said that the Srila Jiva Goswami's Satsandarbhas are directly the six categories of topics of the Bhagavatam, but they're not the sequential explanation of the Bhagavatam, but they're a categorical explanation of the Bhagavatam.
Right.
After that,
Thank you.
then after that, he wasn't satisfied that he commented on the Bhagavatam in a categorical way. And then I don't know the names of the books, but then he wrote another set of books that were on sequential, and then another set of books that were on this, and then all based on Bhagavatam.
Thank you. Thank
Who
you.
was that? Who was it?
That
Who
was
wrote?
Hari Parshad.
No, who wrote it?
Oh, Jiva Goswami.
Jiva Goswami. Right.
And
Thank
just
you,
one
Nanda.
one other thing, quickie, that Srila Vyasadeva, when he compiled all the Vedic literatures and was dissatisfied, he gave a number of verses that was, and I can't remember if it was 4 million or 4 billion or however, but he gave a number. He said Srila Jiva Goswami and Vyasadeva compiled those Vedas over the whole Dwapara, over the whole Yuga. And Jiva Goswami wrote that same many verses in 1/10 of the time. That's how great of a philosopher and logician he was. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go on now, and we'll continue our enlivening discussion based on the Bhagavatam. Tisha, would you read, please? And then after Tisha, Vaishnavi. Wait, we can't hear you real clearly, darling.
Okay, we're having a little tropical storm here, so it might be my connection, but
Okay.
hopefully it's okay.
You're good now. You're good.
Okay.
Thanks.
In succession, O king, the great sage Narada instructed Srimad Bhagavatam unto the unlimitedly powerful Vyasadeva, who meditated in devotional service upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the absolute truth, on the bank of the river Saraswati. Purport. So in the disciplic succession of the Brahma Sampradaya, the practice of yoga meditation is not neglected. But because the devotees are bhakti yogis, they do not undertake the trouble to meditate upon the impersonal Brahman, as indicated here. They meditate on Brahma Paramam, or the Supreme Brahman. Brahman realization begins from the impersonal effulgence, but by further progress of such meditation, manifestation of the Supreme Soul, Paramatma realization takes place. And progressing further, realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is fixed. Sri Narada Muni, as the spiritual master of Vyasadeva, knew very well the position of Vyasadeva, and thus he certified the qualities of Srila Vyasadeva as fixed in the absolute truth with great vow, etc. Narada advised meditation upon the transcendental activities of the Lord. Impersonal Brahman has no activities, but the personality of Godhead has many activities, and all such activities are transcendental, without any tinge of material quality. If the activities of the Supreme Brahman were material activities, then Narada would not have advised Vyasadeva to meditate upon them. Purport continued. And the Param Brahma is...
Tisha.
Yes.
Oh, you can go on reading. And then after her, Vaishnavi. Go on, sweetie.
Okay. And the Param Brahma is Lord Sri Krishna, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. In the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna realized the factual position of Lord Krishna, he summarized the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita by his realization of Lord Sri Krishna, and thus said, "My dear personality of Godhead, you are the supreme absolute truth, the original person in the eternal form of bliss and knowledge. And this is confirmed by Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyasadeva. And above all, your personal self has also confirmed it, from Bhagavad Gita 10, 12, and 13. When Vyasadeva fixed his mind in meditation, he did it in Bhakti Yoga trance and actually saw the Supreme Person with Maya, the illusory energy, in contraposition. As we have discussed before, the Lord's Maya or illusion is also a representation because Maya has no existence without the Lord. Darkness is not independent of light. Without light, no one can experience the contraposition of darkness. However, this Maya or illusion cannot overcome the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but stands apart from him. Apasarayam. I don't know. Therefore, perfection of meditation is realization of the personality of Godhead along with his transcendental activities. Meditation on the impersonal Brahman is a troublesome business for the meditator, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 12.5. Klesho adhikataras tesham avyatsakta chetasam. My attempt.
Very good, Tisha. Excellent. Thank you. Vaishnavi, could you read next? And then Gopapatni.
Srimad Bhagavatam 2.9.46. O King, your questions as to how the universe became manifested from the gigantic form of the personality of Godhead, as well as other questions, I shall answer in detail by explanation of the 4 verses already mentioned. As stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, this great transcendental literature is the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge. And therefore, all questions that are humanly possible regarding the universal affairs, beginning with its creation, are all answered in Srimad Bhagavatam. The answers depend only on the qualification of the person who explains them. The 10 divisions of Srimad Bhagavatam, as explained by the great speaker Srila Shukadeva Goswami, are the limitation of all questions. And intelligent persons will derive all intellectual benefits from them by proper utilization. Thus, in the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 2nd canto, 9th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Answers by Citing the Lord's Version.
Thank you. Don't change the screen yet. I want to ask Vaishnavi a question. What does this actually mean, Vaishnavi? The answers depend only on the qualification of a person who explains them.
Actually, I was going to ask a question on that. Exactly that sentence, statement.
Okay,
there is a verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita saying, I'm not sure exactly, Sukho Veti, I don't know. I don't know whether even Shukadeva Goswami understood or not. Do you remember that, Dhruva Maharaj Prabhu? So based on that, it actually depends on the person who is hearing Bhagavatam, not necessarily who is speaking it, because the speaker need not be even understanding it completely. But as long as the person who is hearing is sincere, then he understands it correctly.
Well, I would say that it probably depends on both the hearer and the speaker. And since Prabhupada says this.
Based on that verse, I'm saying.
Yeah, well, we don't know the verse yet, so you have to find the verse. If you're going to quote a verse, you have to find it.
Prabhu knows that. He said, he nodded, yes.
Pati, do you know that verse? We can't hear you. Unmute.
Yes, I'm familiar with the verse, but I can't find it right offhand. The basic point was he's saying, I may know it, Sukadeva Goswami may know it, Vyasadeva may know it. The absolute truth, the spiritual personality of Krishna is unlimited. And that person responds reciprocally according to the way he's approached. Ye yathamam prapadyante tam stathaiva bhajamyaham.
Right.
Mama vanamartante manusya partasarvasham. All living entities, everyone is connected with Krishna. So the point being made by Srila Prabhupada is that the revelation, it does depend on the speaker, but it also depends on the hearer, as Vaishnavi is saying. It's a reciprocal exchange. It's not, as we've discussed just previously, it's not mundane knowledge. It's not just a package that's in a box that can be understood categorically according to a list. There's a box, each piece fits in the different box, each part has its own part to play. Everything is fluid and ever expanding and unlimited simultaneously. So the way it's understood, the way it's realized, is by hearing by somebody who has realized it to the extent they've realized it, and following that process to understand it similarly.
Can I
Okay, well, just a moment. One point, and then Nanda has something. If one is equipped in medical science, then that person will have a full explanation how you perform an appendicitis. If someone like me were asked, how do you do that? I would have very limited knowledge. So the speaker of the Bhagavatam, if you're going to understand this through a self-realized soul, then he has unlimited knowledge. His knowledge is, but so that's why it's very important as well to hear from someone who is self-realized, who knows more than you do.
totally
You
I
see-
understand.
Yeah.
I found the verse. If you want, I can.
Okay, say the verse.
I think she can share it.
Oh, share it. Oh, there it is. Okay, Lord Shiva said, I may know, Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva may know, and Vyasadeva may know or may not know Srimad Bhagavatam. And the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, the spotless Purana, can be learned only through devotional service, not by material intelligence, speculative methods, or imaginary commentaries. So that supports this. I don't see any difference between this verse and the one that we just read. Let's hear from Nanda. Nandaji?
Well, no, I was just gonna, Vaishnavi, she quoted the verse. I was gonna clarify that verse was spoken by Lord Shiva. But what he's talking about is that they might not, like Vyasadeva, it's kind of like, it's bewildering. How can Vyasadeva may or may not know the Bhagavatam? But it means that he may or may not know the purport of the rasas of the Bhagavatam. Anyway, but everything else you said is there. It depends on the realization of the person who you hear from, what you're going to get from.
And also, I was thinking that saying the Vyasadeva may not know or may not or may know, it's actually figurative, a figure of speech to say even these self-realized personalities should know or not know. That's how potent the Bhagavatam is. The Bhagavatam is the supreme knowledge. One who understands the purport of the Bhagavatam, then all things will be revealed. The spiritual master in the Bhagavatam. And that verse was quoted in the previous purport that we just read. All right, so I think that we're going to go on now, if that's all right, to the next chapter, chapter 10. And Gopapatni, would you begin this chapter for us?
Okay, Jai Haribol.
Thank you.
Srimad Bhagavatam 2:10, 1, 2. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following: the creation of the universe, sub-creation, planetary systems, protection by the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of manus, the science of God, returning home, back to Godhead, liberation, and the summum bonum. To isolate the transcendence of the summum bonum, the symptoms of the rest are described sometimes by Vedic inference, sometimes by direct explanation, and sometimes by summary explanations given by the great sages. What is inference? You want me to do the next one too? Uh-oh. The screen disappeared.
Yeah, no, inference means that it's explained in the Vedas. Let me put it up again. In other words, this knowledge to isolate the transcendence from of the summum bonum. In other words, to make sure that the goal is to understand God, the supreme personality of Godhead, but it will be explained in so many different ways. Sometimes the rest are described by Vedic inference, Vedic references, sometimes by direct explanations, explaining him personally, and sometimes by a summary explanation given by great sages. This is what will take place during the recitation of the Bhagavatam.
Dang, that's a lot.
Aye.
Should I keep going?
Yes, please.
Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam 2:10:3. The elementary creation of 16 items of matter, namely the 5 elements, fire, water, land, air, and sky, sound, form, taste, smell, touch, and the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and mind, is known as sarga, whereas subsequent resultant interactions of the modes of material nature is called visarga. ... Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In order to explain the 10 divisional symptoms of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 7 continuous verses. The first of these, under reference, pertains to the 16 elementary manifestations of earth, water, etc., with material ego composed of material intelligence and mind. The subsequent creation is a result of the reactions of the above mentioned 16 energies of the first Purusha, the Mahavishnu, incarnation of Govinda, as later explained by Brahma in his treatise, Brahma Samhita 547. The first Purusha incarnation of Govinda, Lord Krishna, known as Mahavishnu, goes into a yogi nidra mystic sleep, and the innumerable universes are situated in potency in each and every hair hole of his transcendental body.
Excuse me, Gopipatni, just want to point out something because it's kind of like in different categories here, these purports. So in the verse itself, it explains that these 5 elements, the basic elementary constituents of matter, earth, fire, water, land, air, and sky, plus sound, touch, form, taste, smell, touch, and the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin, and mind. These are known as sarga. So in the purport, Prabhupada's explaining these come from the Mahavishnu. These are part of the initial creation called sarga. Then Brahma takes those ingredients and creates bodies and planets and situations in the universe, which are called visarga. Just to be clear, he said this is known as sarga, whereas subsequent resultant interaction of the modes of nature is called visarga. So the whole thing is set up by Mahavishnu, as explained in this first paragraph, and now it will explain what happens subsequently. So please continue. Just wanted to make that clear.
As mentioned in the previous verse, Shrutena, or with reference to the Vedic conclusions, the creation is made possible from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, directly by manifestation of his particular energies. Without such a Vedic reference, the creation appears to be a product of material nature. This conclusion comes from a poor fund of knowledge. From Vedic reference, it is concluded that the origin of all energies, namely internal, external, and marginal, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as explained herein before, the illusory conclusion is that creation is made by the inert material nature. The Vedic conclusion is transcendental light, whereas the non-Vedic conclusion is material darkness. The internal potency of the Supreme Lord is identical with the Supreme Lord, and the external potency is enlivened in contact with the internal potency. The parts and parcels of the internal potency, which react in contact with the external potency, are called the marginal potency, or the living entities. Thus, the original creation is directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Param Brahma, and the secondary creation, as a reactionary result of the original ingredients, is made by Brahma. Thus, the activities of the whole universe are started.
Thank you, Gopa. Before we go on, and Bhaja, you're reading next, okay? And we'll address what you have to say. But we had as per our previous discussion, Yasya Deva Parabhaktir Yata Deva Tata Guru Tasyaiti Ka Hita Yarta Prakashante Mahatmana. That's from the Svetasvara Upanishad. And this is, I'll read the translation, but the point is that the Vedas, the scriptures are the first and most profound source of knowledge. Unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. So we want to have the imports of Vedic knowledge, and we attain that through service, devotion, and hearing from the spiritual master. That, just to clarify that, Vaishnavi, as in relation to the other quote that you gave us. Okay, Bhadra, would you like to read next? And did you have something to say?
No, just your blessings. Text 4.
Very good.
The right situation for the living entities is to obey the laws of the Lord and thus be in perfect peace of mind under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Manus and their laws are meant to give right direction in life. The impetus for activity is the desire for productive work. Purport. This material world is created, maintained for some time, and again annihilated by the will of the Lord. The ingredients for creation and the subordinate creator Brahma are first created by Lord Vishnu in his first and second incarnations. The first Purusha incarnation is Mahavishnu. The second Purusha incarnation is Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and from whom Brahma is created. The third Purusha avatar is the Kshirodaksha Vishnu, who lives as the super soul of everything in the universe and maintains the creation generated by Brahma. Shiva is one of the many sons of Brahma, and he annihilates the creation. Therefore, the original creator of the universe is Vishnu, and he is also the maintainer of the created beings by his causeless mercy. As such, it is the duty of all conditioned souls to acknowledge the victory of the Lord and thus become pure devotees and live peacefully in this world, where miseries and dangers are always in existence. The conditioned soul who takes this material creation as the place for satisfaction of the senses and thus are illusioned by the external energy of Vishnu remain again to be subject to the laws of material nature, creation and destruction. Go on.
We'll have Madhurya Leela read next, because we have a few more people to read also, but thank you, Bhadra. Thank you. Madhurya, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
The only means to attain eternal life is to go back home, back to Godhead, where there is no more rebirth as in the material planets. The conditioned souls, being unaware of this very simple fact, because of forgetting their relationship with the Lord of Vaikuntha, try to plan out a permanent life in this material world. Being illusioned by the external energy, they thus become engaged in various types of economic and religious development, forgetting that they are meant for going back home, back to Godhead. The directive scriptures made by the Manus in different ages and millenniums are called Sadharma, good guidance for the human beings who should take advantage of all the revealed scriptures for their own interest. to make life's successful termination. Creation is not false, but it is a temporary manifestation just to give a chance to the conditioned souls to go back to Godhead. The desire to go back to Godhead and functions performed in that direction form the right path of work. When such a regulated path is accepted, the Lord gives all protection to his devotees by his causeless mercy, while the non-devotees risk their own activities to bind themselves in a chain of fruitive reactions. The word saddharma is significant in this connection. Saddharma, or duty performed for going back to Godhead, and thus becoming his unalloyed devotee, is the only pious activity. All others may pretend to be pious, but actually they're not. It is for this reason only that the Lord advises in the Bhagavad Gita that one give up all so-called religious activities and completely engage in the devotional service of the Lord, to become free from all anxieties due to the dangerous life of material existence. To work situated in Saddharma is the right direction of life. One's aim of life should be to go back home, back to Godhead, and not be subjected to repeated births and deaths in the material world by getting good or bad bodies for temporary existence. Herein lies the intelligence of human beings, of human life, and one should desire the activities of life in that way.
Thank you, Madhurya. You have something to say about that real quick?
Well, Saddharma is the basis of all our activities and should be the basis of our activities. So everything we do should be performed to help us to go back to Godhead and perform devotional service, because any other activity, even though it may be pious, it binds us and keeps us here.
Yeah, and this is a temporary, we were talking this morning about how this world is a temporary. And what does that mean? Something that happened 5 years ago is finished, gone, no matter how much energy and attachment and glory one has gotten from it, it is over. So, but spiritual life in the spiritual world is eternal. Thank you, Madhurya. Faye, will you continue for us, please? And then after Faye, Ekadasi.
Srimad Bhagavatam 2.10.5. The Science of God describes the incarnations of the personality of Godhead and his different activities together with the activities of his great devotees. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. During the course of the existence of the cosmic manifestation, the chronology of history is created, recording the activities of the living entities. People in general have a tendency to learn the history and narrations of different men and times, but due to a lack of knowledge in the science of Godhead, they are not apt to study the history of the incarnations of the personality of Godhead. It should always be remembered that the material creation is created for the salvation of the conditioned souls. The merciful Lord, out of his causeless mercy, descends to various planets in the material world and acts for the salvation of the conditioned souls. That makes the history and the narrations worth reading. Srimad Bhagavatam offers such transcendental topics of the Lord in relationship with great devotees. Therefore, the topics of the devotees and the Lord are to be given respectful oral reception.
Thank you, Faye. And Faye has been reading the Bhagavatam for a very long time. So what can you see how that relates, Faye?
Yes, Mataji, if you go back to our earlier conversations just a little, we were talking about the differences between material education or mundane education and a spiritual education. It's unfortunate that with the material education, we're learning history and history about mundane things and mundane people and mundane events.
with the Srimad Bhagavatam and learning about the personality of Godhead, his incarnations and interactions with his devotees, that's, as they say, where it's at. That's what we should be reading, what we should be hearing, because that's what's real and what matters. It's learning all about God and how he comes and interacts with us. And secondly, how he wants us to go back to Godhead. And third, how this world that we claim, quote unquote, to be real is a material illusion. But it was set here and set up purposefully to give us a chance to get ourselves straight and figure it out and go back to Godhead.
Thank you, Faye. That was very enlivening. Thank you. Okay, let's go on with the Kadasi and then Narayan.
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to say one quick thing about 2.4, just that part where in the purport where Prabhupada says, he speaks about good or bad bodies. And it just made me think about how he, in other places, he'll say that, prison suits, the first class prison suit and or fourth class prison suit. And it doesn't matter, which one you have, either way, it's still a prison suit, so I just thought about that, good or bad bodies, because, in the material world, it's very much about trying to get a good body, looks and all of that. But it either way, it's still the same thing.
We were just speaking this morning about how you speak to young people today, they don't know who the Beatles are. And I remember my daughter, she had to do a history report about Woodstock. And of course, that might sound like history to a lot of people, but that was my youth. So everything is very, very temporary, and we want the eternal. We're giving so much energy to that which is temporary. It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. All right, let's go on with Narayan and then Manvantara.
Oh, was I supposed to read now?
Oh, after you. I'm sorry.
Okay. 2.10.6. The merging of the living entity, along with his conditional living tendency, with the mystic lying down of the Mahavishnu, is called the winding up of the cosmic manifestation. Liberation is the permanent situation of the form of the living entity after he gives up the changeable, gross, and subtle material bodies. Purport. As we have discussed several times, there are two types of living entities. Most of them are ever liberated, or nitya muktas, while some of them are ever conditioned. The ever conditioned souls are apt to develop a mentality of lording over the material nature, and therefore the material cosmic creation is manifested to give the ever conditioned souls two kinds of facilities. One facility is that the conditioned soul can act according to his tendency to lord it over the cosmic manifestation. And the other facility gives the conditioned soul a chance to come back to Godhead. So we have a choice. We can either pretend to be God or we can serve God and actually be happy. So after the winding up of the cosmic manifestation, most of the conditioned souls merge into the existence of the Mahavishnu personality of Godhead, lying in his mystic slumber, to be created again in the next creation. But some of the conditioned souls who follow the transcendental sound in the form of Vedic literatures and are thus able to go back to Godhead attain spiritual and original bodies after quitting the conditional, gross, and subtle material bodies. The material conditional bodies develop out of the living entity's forgetfulness of their relationship with Godhead, and during the course of the cosmic manifestation, the conditioned souls are given a chance to revive their original status of life with the help of revealed scriptures, so mercifully compiled by the Lord in his different incarnations. Reading or hearing of such transcendental literatures helps one become liberated even in the conditional state of material existence. All the Vedic literatures aim at devotional service to the personality of Godhead. And as soon as one is fixed upon this point, he at once becomes liberated from conditional life.
That's very good news. Thank you. Hare Krishna. You have something to say further than that?
Yeah, just it's just amazing how actually Srila Prabhupada, he says the same thing actually over and over, and but still it never gets tiring, it's never boring, and I just feel like every time I hear it, it's like I feel like another layer is taken off, but there's still so many, but it's just very enlivening, just really getting the understanding that what we're really meant to be doing here, and how to really be happy.
Thank you. We're speaking about eternity. That's what it is. We feel comfortable and happy and hopeful because we're existing in eternity while we read the Bhagavatam. And that's our constitutional position. Thank you, Ekadasi. So Narayan and then Manvantara, will you please read?
Okay.
Thank you.
Srimad Bhagavatam 2.10.7. The Supreme One, who is celebrated as the Supreme Being of the Supreme Soul, is the Supreme Source of the cosmic manifestation, as well as its reservoir and winding up. Thus, he is the Supreme Fountainhead and Absolute Truth. Purport. The original source of all energies, or the Summum Bonum, is the Absolute Truth, which is called Parabrahma, etc. And Bhagawan is the last word of the Absolute Truth. But even with the synonyms for Bhagawan, such as Narayan, Vishnu, and Purusa, the last word is Krishna, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Besides that, the Srimad Bhagavatam is the representation of Lord Krishna as a sung incarnation of the Lord. The Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali should get light from this Purana.
You're muted, Sama.
Sorry, that verse is the perfection of our lives, really, because everything is being revealed. The Bhagavatam is non-different than Krishna. This is the sound representation of Krishna. So we are directly associating with eternity and with Krishna by hearing the Bhagavatam and reading the Bhagavatam. Manvantara, can you continue, please? And then Dinanath. Manvantara, I think you're muted, darling. There you go.
Thus, by general conclusion, Lord Krishna is the ultimate source of all energies. And the word Krishna means that. And to explain Krishna, or the science of Krishna, the Srimad Bhagavatam has been prepared. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, this truth is indicated in the questions and answers by Sutta Goswami and the great sages like Shaunaka. And in the first and second chapters of the canto, this is explained. In the third chapter, this subject is more explicit. And in the fourth chapter, even more explicit. In the second canto, the absolute truth as the personality of Godhead is further emphasized, and the indication is the Supreme Lord Krishna. The summary of Srimad Bhagavatam in 4 verses, as we have already discussed, is succinct. This Supreme Personality of Godhead in the ultimate issue is confirmed by Brahma in his Brahma Samahita as Isvara Parama Krishna Saksit Ananda Vigraha. So it is concluded in the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The complete subject matter is elaborately explained in the 10th and 11th cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the matter of the changes of the Manus or Manvantaras, such as the Swayambhuva Manvantara and the Saksusha Manvantara, and as they're discussed in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna is indicated. In the 8th canto, the Visvasvarta Manvantara, explains the same subject indirectly, and in the 9th canto, the same purport is there. In the 12th canto, the same is further explained, specifically regarding the different incarnations of the Lord. Thus, it is concluded by studying the complete Srimad Bhagavatam that Lord Sri Krishna is the ultimate summum bonum, or the ultimate source of all energy. And according to the grades of worshippers, the indication of the nomenclature may be differently explained as Narayana, Brahma, Paramatma, etc.
Thank you, Manvantara. That was a perfect summary of the Bhagavatam. Prabhupada does that throughout the Bhagavatam. He summarizes things to make everything very concise. Dinanath, would you read next? And then Vaishnavi.
Srimad Bhagavatam 2.10.8. The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the Adhyatmic person, and the individual controlling deity of the senses is called Adidhaivik. The embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the Adibhautik person. Purport. All the controlling deities like Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva are different manifestations of the Paramatma feature of the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, who exhibits himself in such manners by entering into each and every universe generated from him. But still, apparently, there are divisions of the controller uncontrolled. For example, in the food controlling department, the controller of food is a person made of the same ingredients as the person who is controlled. Similarly, each and every individual in the material world is controlled by the higher demigods. For example, we have our senses, but the senses are controlled by superior controlling deities. We cannot see without light, and the supreme controller of light is the sun. The sun god is in the sun planet, and we, the individual human beings, or any other beings on this earth, are all controlled by the sun god as far as our eyes are concerned. Similarly, all the senses we have are controlled by the superior demigods, who are also as much living entities as we are, but one is empowered while the other is controlled. The controlled living entity is called the Adhyatmic person, and the controller is called the Adidhaivik person. All these positions in the material world are due to different fruitive activities. Any individual living being can become the sun god, or even Brahma, or any other god in the upper planetary system by a higher grade of pious work. And similarly, one becomes controlled by the higher demigods by lower grades of fruitive activities. So every individual living entity is subject to the supreme control of the Paramatma, who puts everyone in different positions of the controller and the controlled.
Yes, that is the situation in the material world. Thank you. Vaishnavi, would you read? And then Nanda.
Somebody had a question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, sweetie, sorry.
Yeah, I still, I had some trouble with this purport. Like, I didn't really understand the example of the food controlling department. I feel like I need a little bit more clarification on this one.
The basic concept is that there are different categories being listed here. Adhyatmic is the individual person. Adidivik, like Daivihesha, Daivi means superior control, is the Adidivik person. And the Adibodhic person is other living entities, people that we see. So Adhyatmic, Atma, deals with the mind and the body. Adhyatmic means the individual person. Adidivik means the demigods and higher control of us. And Adibodhic is other people. So what he's describing here is that the living entity, the point being made, is not independent. At every step, everything is networked. And as far as the food controlling, this one here, he's saying that when you eat food, first of all, where did you get the food? Did you create the food? No, you got it from someone else. You got it from the Adidivik. It had to rain. Then the Earth planet had to produce the vegetables and grains. So all this is coming from the Adidivik and Adibodhic, which are the other living entities. But the Adhyatmic is not individually independent. He's dependent. So when you eat the food, then what happens? Are we in control of what happens once we swallow food and how it's distributed throughout the body? Or are we dependent on someone else doing that for us by higher control? Is this clear, Kadasi?
Yes, thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. Anybody have anything else, realizations on that or questions? This whole section, what's going on now is, I guess an example visually would be like a graph. Like, let's say the government. At the top, there's the king, then his ministers, like if you have this, or generations, they have the original father and mother, and then their children, and then their children, and their children. It's all subsequent. What's going on now is that these different characteristics of the universe are being described in Srimad Bhagavatam. There are 10 characteristics. The first one is the creation. So now it's slowly transitioning into the explanation of that creation, the categories that are manifest in it. And this particular verse and purport are describing those three categories: the Adhyatmic, the individual person; the Adidivik, the system of maintenance of the universe by the demigods; and the Adibodhic persons are everyone else other than the Adhyatmic person.
I can add something to that, if I may. Tamahar gave class the other day here, and he was talking about the blocked sky. Now, my understanding of the blocked sky was a little bit different than what he presented. In theater, everything, or when they make a movie, they block, the director blocks or tells the actors where to stand exactly in order to create the movie. So it's not spontaneous, it's already determined. And the blocked sky is our, if you look up at the sky, actually they are the controllers. The elements, the demigods, we are all being controlled and blocked. We think we have such great independence, but we don't. So in the same way, the Adhyatmic, Adidivik, Adibodhic, these are different ways that we are all being controlled by the material energy. We are not free. People are saying they're free. First of all, you're not free because you have to go to the bathroom. You have to satisfy this need. We're controlled at every step. The only freedom we have is our free will to serve Krishna or not to serve Krishna. So that's the way I saw it, actually. That our control, we're controlled at every step of the way. Really, it's actually a little bit funny to think of it like that. We spend so much. We think that we're controlling everything and making everything perfect. Actually, we're instruments. Let's be instruments for Krishna. That's our natural constitutional position. And that's where we have personality. We have a personality in regard to Krishna. This life, we have a personality in regard to the modes of nature, and it's over when we die. All right, let's finish up here. This is the last verse. Vaishnavi, would you like to read?
Okay. Purport continued, that which distinguishes the controller and controlled, that is, the material body, is called the Adhibhautik Purusha. The body is sometimes called Purusha, as confirmed in the Vedas in the following hymn. Sava Esha Purusho Anna Rasamayaha. This body is called Anna Rasa, embodiment. This body depends on food. The living entity which is embodied does not eat anything. However, because the owner is spirit in essence, the material body requires replacement of matter for the wearing and tearing of the mechanical body. Therefore, the distinction between the individual living entity and controlling planetary deities is in the Anna Rasamaya body. The sun may have a gigantic body and the man may have a smaller body, but all these visible bodies are made of matter. Nonetheless, the sun god and the individual person, who are related as the controller and the controlled, are the same spiritual parts and parcels of the Supreme Being, and it is the Supreme Being who places different parts and parcels in different positions. And thus, the conclusion is that the Supreme Person is the shelter of all.
Thank you, Vaishnavi. This is another example how Prabhupada actually answers all the questions at the end. I was mistaken. We have one more verse to read. So Nanda, are you still with us? Would you like to read that last verse?
Yes, ma'am. 2:10:9. All three of the above mentioned stages of different living entities are interdependent. In the absence of one, another is not understood. But the Supreme Being, who sees every one of them as the shelter of the shelter, is independent of all, and therefore he is the supreme shelter. Purport: there are innumerable living entities, one dependent on the other in relationship of the controlled and the controller. But without the medium of perception, no one can know or understand who is the controlled and who is the controller. For example, the sun controls the power of our vision. We can see the sun because the sun has its body, and the sunlight is useful only because we have eyes. Without our having eyes, the sunlight is useless, and without sunlight, the eyes are useless. Thus, they are interdependent, and none of them is independent. Therefore, the natural question arises concerning who made them interdependent. The one who has made such a relationship of interdependence must be ultimately completely independent. Continued. As stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, the ultimate source of all interdependent objectives is the complete independent subject. This ultimate source of all interdependence is the Supreme Truth, or Paramatma, the Super Soul, who is not dependent on anything else. He is Svashraya Shraya. He is only dependent on himself, and thus he is the supreme shelter of everything. Although Paramatma and Brahman are subordinate to Bhagavan, because Bhagavan is Purushottam, or the Supreme Person, he is the source of the Super Soul also. In the Bhagavad Gita 15:18, Lord Krishna says that he is Purushottam and the source of everything, and thus it is concluded that Sri Krishna is the ultimate source and shelter of all entities, including the Super Soul and Supreme Brahman. Even accepting that there is no difference between the Super Soul and the individual soul, the individual soul is dependent on the Super Soul for being liberated from the illusion of material energy. The individual is under the clutches of illusory energy, and therefore, although qualitatively one with the supersoul, he is under the illusion of identifying himself with matter. And to get out of this illusory conception of factual life, the individual soul has to depend on the supersoul to be recognized as one with him. That's a weird sentence. I'm going to read it again. And to get out of this illusory conception of factual life, the individual soul has to depend on the supersoul to be recognized as one with him. In that sense, also, the supersoul is the supreme shelter, and there is no doubt about it. So here's my question. Why does, oh, there's more? Okay. Why does it say?
Oh, go on. And then go on. No. Bajra's going to be the last part. But yeah, talk about that question, Nanda.
The question is that sentence, and to get out of this illusory concept of factual life. Why doesn't it say, and to get out of this illusory concept of illusory life?
Well, considering factual life, he's talking about, I think, that we're thinking that this is factual. And one has to depend on the super soul to be recognized as one with him, means Chinta Beta Beta Tattva, one in relation with him. That was my understanding. What do you think, Patrick?
It doesn't say to get out of factual life. It says to get out of the illusory conception of factual life.
Oh,
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's an illusion. Thank you.
Thank you. See how dangerous it is? When we rely on our imperfect senses, we can misinterpret everything. Okay, Bajra, can you finish up for us here?
Thank you. The individual living entity, the Jiva, is always dependent on the super soul, Paramatma. Because the individual soul forgets his spiritual identity, whereas the super soul, Paramatma, does not forget his transcendental position. In the Bhagavad Gita, these separate positions of the Jivatma and the Paramatma are specifically mentioned. In the 4th chapter, Arjuna, the Jiva soul, is represented as the forgetful of his many previous births. But the Lord, the super soul, is not forgetful. The Lord even remembers when he taught the Bhagavad Gita to the sun god some billions of years before. The Lord can remember such millions or billions of years, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 7:26 as follows. Vedaham samritani vartmanani charjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu vedana kasya. Lord in his eternal, blissful body of the knowledge is fully aware of all that happened in the past, that is going on at the present, also will happen in the future. But in spite of his being the center of poor and Brahman, persons with poor fund of knowledge are unable to understand him as he is. The propaganda of the identity of cosmic consciousness, the consciousness of the individual living entities, is completely misleading. Because even such a person or individual soul as Arjuna would not remember his past deeds, although he is always with the Lord. And what can be the tiny ordinary man, falsely claiming to be one with the cosmic consciousness, know about his past, present, and future?
Thank you, Bajra. Pati, you want to say something about that? Unmute.
Basically, it's just emphasizing the difference between the Lord and the living entities. If you follow the train of thought of this whole section now, this is called Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. And it's pointing out in the beginning that all the Vedic literatures point to Krishna, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, as the ultimate shelter and source of everything. And then we were reading how those different categories of the manifestation, the Adibodhic, Adidaivic, Adiatmic person, the different senses, the different material elements, all these different things are categories that appear real and independent in this material world. And we're constantly bringing it back to how, no, they're not actually independent, they're actually interdependent. And all of the interdependence was created by someone, and that person is Krishna. He's even the source or shelter of Supersoul and Narayan. So in this particular final part of the purport, the example is being given that the Lord can remember billions and billions of years ago, even though he was with Arjuna. Arjuna was there presently. He's an eternally liberated soul. But because he's marginal, because he's tiny, because he's an individual, tiny living entity, he doesn't have the same qualities as the shelter. And the 10 characteristics that are the Srimad Bhagavatam, you may remember that it described that the reason all the other 9 are being described so distinctly is to categorize them as under the shelter of the supreme shelter. The book is about Bhagavan. This is the Bhagavat Purana. So the book is about him, and everything else is subordinate to him. And all these different aspects of the book are being brought up to prove that point.
Thank you. Another thing that I have noticed during these purports is how Srila Prabhupada is constantly referring to the purpose of the material world. It's a fact that we are an illusion here, and the purpose is to give the conditioned soul an opportunity to go back to Godhead. Whereas taking this as all factual information, this is where we are, this is all that matters, that is not even being considered by Srila Prabhupada. The purpose of the material world is only to give an opportunity for the conditioned soul to return back to Godhead. I think that's really reassuring. Manvantar, unmute yourself. She has a statement.
Along that line of getting back to Godhead, I think it was Akadashi that read in her reading with in the purport, though, it talked about the question is along the line of liberation and actually exiting the material world. So Prabhupada said in his purport that he at once becomes liberated from conditional life, like through reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam, I think is what.
Right, I remember that purport.
Yeah, and then later on in text 9, it talked about the purport again, talked about the interdependencies of the various demigods, and then it said that even accepting that there is no difference between the super soul and the individual soul is dependent on the super soul for being liberated from the illusion of material energy. And so then I was thinking of Vidura, because like Vidura helped Dhritarashtra to gain liberation, but there was all this conversation about, okay, he didn't get to Vaikuntha Loka because of his offenses. So then it's like, the question, I'm trying to ask the question without offense, because I don't know. So that's why I'm asking. So
as far as I know, Dhritarashtra did get a different kind of liberation. He didn't go to Krishna Loka.
Okay,
there's
so
a lot
it's a different
of
kind
places
of
up there.
liberation. Okay.
Yeah.
So the question is like, the spiritual master can award Krishna, but it looks like it's dependent on Krishna. Like Krishna, to get to Vaikuntha Loka, at least up till the reading till now, I'm asking that it appears that the spiritual master awards liberation only, not Krishna, or you know what I mean?
Oh, no.
This, like, I don't know how to ask the question.
Unmute, Pati, unmute.
It sounds like what Manvantar is asking, clarify if I'm getting your gist correctly, is that Vidura instructed Dhritarashtra, therefore he got the mercy of his spiritual master, but he wasn't liberated. So what is the strength of Vidura as the spiritual master? Why couldn't he attain love of Godhead? Because he is the spiritual master, and therefore that's why you were hesitant to say something about the spiritual master's potency. Am I right?
Okay, good. We got that. Good.
Okay.
So okay, because I'm a talkative person, I'll just butt right in and say the spiritual master is actually the pure spiritual master, pure devotee spiritual master. Krishna is completely, there's an alliance. It's a complete alliance. So it's the via medium. That's what Prabhupada says, the via medium. So the spiritual master and Krishna are completely connected. And as far as Dhritarashtra is concerned, it depends upon the soul, how advanced he is to see what kind of liberation he's going to have. But it's not that the spiritual master, to the extent that he is a pure devotee, because there are different levels of pure devotee, he can award Krishna. That's my understanding. Pati, what do you think? He can award Krishna according to, but then Krishna's independent.
Earlier in our course materials, everybody that did the forums read the conversation between Srila Prabhupada and one Indian man who came to him. And the man said, please give me your mercy. And Srila Prabhupada explained to him, I've already given my mercy. My mercy is there in the books, it's there in the instructions, it's there in the movement. And the man said, well, please give me the your mercy, so I'll be enthusiastic to take it up. And Prabhupada said, no, this is misunderstanding. Just like the person who's fallen into the well, you drop the rope down to the person. That person has to grab onto the rope and pull it up. In other words, it's reciprocal. It's not like us in the material world where you're given something and automatically you receive it. You have to actually work it. You have to perform, just like we go back to the beginning of today's readings. At the end of the last chapter, it was describing how the knowledge that Brahma had received from the Lord was passed on to Narada due to his good qualities of submissive behavior, service, pariprashnena sevaya, in that verse, tadvini pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. Questions, service, there's a way to cultivate and mature this knowledge. So Prabhupada's explaining the person in the well has to hold on to the rope in order to get up. You can't give him the enthusiasm to hold on to the rope. He has to have developed it. Now, in the case of Dhritarashtra had performed so many offenses to the Lord's devotees that his bank account of Sukriti, spiritual bank account, was not sufficiently full so that he could attain love for Krishna. He needed more maturity in his future. But because of his association with Vidura and Vidura's mercy upon him, he was at least given the chance for liberation to the extent that he got it. That's my understanding.
Also, I'd like
It's
to
also,
add, go on. Who's
just as an
speaking?
aside, it's Madhuri. It's
Yeah.
just a aside. Also, isn't it said that one can only advance to the level of one's spiritual master? So we have to be very careful in choosing the spiritual master that we choose it with the Bhagavatam.
That also is very true.
True. Where did you find that's true?
I thought it was true. It's not true.
No, it's not true. We see so many different examples where a person apparently is more advanced. For example, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is more advanced than Isvara Puri. Just as an example, the point is, otherwise, this system of disciplic succession is not linear, that one can't surpass. There are examples. There's a book by Bhaktivinoda Thakur called Jaiva Dharma. And in the book, one of the characters has a spiritual master who is in Sakya Rasa, his spiritual master. But as he performs his devotional service, he becomes more interested, due to his true spiritual eternal nature, in Madhurya Rasa. So he goes to his spiritual master and they have a conversation, and that spiritual master understands he's on a level that surpasses me. So he sends him to a Siksha guru who can explain to him the intricacies of something that wasn't even known to him.
Okay, so that's in compatibility with the statement that Madhurya Leela made, that you can only advance as far as your spiritual master. It doesn't mean that you stay there. If you have a nice bona fide spiritual master who sends you to someone else to learn that other
Okay.
aspect of devotional service,
Okay,
that would be
I
there.
just wanted to clarify that it's not, otherwise it would be like you can only go up to one level and then stop, because that's where your spiritual master was at.
And then what we also see in the cyclic succession, that if someone who is initiated by one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, and let's say they fall away from Krishna consciousness, we have the whole line of the cyclic succession, including Srila Prabhupada, to
Another
take shelter
perfect
of.
example. Another
Yeah.
perfect example.
And one more correction, if you may. The material world is actually perfectly made by Krishna, where, back to that example of that Srila Prabhupada gave, in one house, they are eating, they are sleeping, they are going to work, they're doing all the activities, and the other house, there is the temple, and they're eating and sleeping and doing everything, but one is for Krishna and one is for Maya. So you said something to the point that in the material world, that's not happening. Everything is really happening in the material world. All facilities are there. It's just what we're using it for.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
What did I say?
You said something about the material world. That's the difference between the spiritual and the material world. That doesn't have something, I forgot exactly what it was, but I'm really risking my life actually.
No.
this.
You know, anything. I don't understand what your concept was. That you think I said something. What you just said, I agree with. So I don't know what you're thinking. I said
And
something.
then I misheard it.
Whatever. Okay.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, well, does anybody else have something to add to this very wonderful discussion? We just finished this chapter. No, we didn't finish the chapter. We're still going on with this chapter. We're almost finished with the second canto. And then we have the Brahma Samhita, which, get ready, everyone. That's Lord Brahma speaking, and it's very, very profound. Okay, and I think we'll call it. Thank you and I just want to say to everyone, thank you so much, because this is a real Sangha. It's an association of devotees, and that's why we become enlivened hearing about Krishna and eternity. It's our constitutional position, and thank you for being here, and I'm so grateful to be able to discuss these things with such sincere souls. Thank you. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Corprimande.
Hare Krishna.